Welcome, mortals, to the Parallax Podcast. Last week, you heard how Alice's life came to a sudden halt, but how did it start? Now, we're uncovering everything her niece Karisa knows. We're here to share the good, the bad, and the unknown here on the podcast.
Are you ready for this, Willow?
I have been thinking, especially because I've been making some of those little clips for our social media, I've been thinking about when you told me at the very end of the episode last week about how Goble sent the Stargazer lilies, or tried to your parents, and not your parents, to Alice's parents, and I am just like, I'm concerned because that was just, it was so creepy to me. It was so creepy because you hear from a lot of the true crime podcasts and the different cases and such about how some of these killers like enjoy taunting the people who were close to those that they killed. Mm-hmm. But hearing it from you and it being, about something that happened to your family was so different because it was kind of this, oh, this really does happen. And it's just disgusting. And then I was like, dear Lord, what else are you going to tell me? Because that was creepy enough. And I know you have more information. And so I've just been like, I don't even know. Excited is not the right word, but it's the word I'll use to figure out what you're going to tell me.
Anticipating with a little bit of
dread.
Like, ooh, yeah. I don't know where it's going to go. So for last week's episode, we covered Sean Goble and his murders that he was convicted of, which one of those murders happened to be my aunt, his last murder. Mm-hmm. And her name was Alice Rebecca Haynes. We called her Aunt Becky. So growing up, my memories of Aunt Becky were, for me, pleasant because I didn't have the adult view of her when I was younger. All I knew was she was there randomly. She was always kind of like Hot Mess Express is what we would say now. Yeah. But her hair was always disheveled. She never wore a bra. So she was her own little free spirit. But I did know that I was told, she was a truck driver. But that translates as I got older that she was a prostitute. She was a sex worker. She was someone who was in the trucks. She was with truck drivers. It wasn't necessarily that she was a truck driver, but I'm sure she was very skilled on trucks in general, knowing how to drive them.
That's just, where she would go to because that's how she was able to make her money.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember her sending me postcards. Mm-hmm. I don't think that any of the other nieces and nephews received this. I seem to be the only one that kind of glommed onto her when she was there. I was very fascinated by her when she was there. Because she was this eccentric character.
Yeah, I was going to say, knowing you, I would imagine it's because she was that free spirit and she was more out there. And it almost, which I could be very, very wrong in saying this because we're obviously very early on and you telling me about her, but it's almost like she was just very unapologetically her. Like
I don't think she knew. So me being an empath, I feel at a younger age, I could sense her lack of understanding and her innocence. But at the same time, I also could sense how my family was disgusted by her and didn't want her around. I could hear them talking low. Becky's here. She's going with you this time. Oh, she's going with you this time. Like no one wanted to keep her around and stay at their house.
That's so sad too, because like she could have done, I feel like, they sit there, like you said, and they're acting like they're so disgusted by her. But I feel like in a lot of these situations, people in her situation who were kind of in this more drifting phase and who, were in the sex work industry, if they wanted to do better or if they needed to do better for themselves, like the best way to do that is with a support system. And so it's not like she didn't need them to be like, oh, we're disgusted by you. Like she needed the support system. But I feel like people don't really recognize that.
I don't think she knew any better.
Really?
So let's talk about her early years. These are stories from my grandmother and my aunts and everybody, as she was growing up. My grandmother did her best to deal with my Aunt Becky. My mom, who was the next oldest to her, Becky was her next younger sister. There were 8 kids in total.
8 kids?
I saw your eyes just get big.
What? I mean, I grew up in a household of 8 children. I have 1 biological brother, 1 half sister, and 5 stepbrothers. So it was never a dull moment whatsoever. Was it mostly sisters, or did she also have brothers as well?
There were 5 daughters, 3 sons.
Woo, that's so many ladies in one household.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
With that said, my grandparents, of course, had 8 kids, Aunt Becky being like down there in the middle of that. But this is before autism and a lot of mental issues and challenges were kind of on the forefront of study. For me, I think she was somewhere on the spectrum because she was very resourceful. When she was in middle school, and I have varying stories. I have one aunt that tells me it was younger, but my mom said I remember her in elementary school and everything, but I don't remember her in middle school. So she went to a special school at this point. Then at some point between the age of 5 and like 12, my grandmother tried to put her into a mental institute. For my Aunt Becky was always getting out of the house. My grandparents would lock doors and windows. At a very young age of 5, she was still getting out of the house. She would be found on neighbors' porches, sleeping on their furniture. Yeah, it was like a
So she's
nonstop
just like
situation. Always
running
escaping.
away?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. She would just be, and that's the thing. If you think about it, she may have just been, I don't know, in her mind trapped, and she wanted to get out and explore. So she was always escaping.
Maybe she was just that kind of free spirit, and especially at that young, I would that young, if it really did happen more so elementary school, and there's not any clear history of like true abuse type situations, and I'm not trying to make any allegations.
Yeah, there wasn't.
I'm just,
No, this was just very young age. There was no abuse. My grandfather worked out of the house. My grandmother worked in the house at a young age.
I would be thinking it's just wanting to get out
her
and
mental
explore.
state. Yeah, it's more of like being on a spectrum and just exploring and being interested in what's in the outside. Okay, so she's an escape artist. We know this. When my grandmother took her to...
I'm so sorry, but when you said that, that's how we describe huskies. Anyway,
What?
Continue.
You describe huskies how?
As escape artists.
Oh, they are, because we've had a couple huskies. And you, like, that is like Husky 101. You put cinder blocks deep down in your fence line. So as they dig, they hit a wall.
They hit a wall. So basically what you're saying is your Aunt Becky was a husky.
Yes. Anyways, my grandmother takes her to a psychiatric facility, and she tells them, you need to be careful, because she's going to leave her there for observation. You need to be careful. She warns them that she's an escape artist, and they're like, they insure her. We have high security. She's not getting out of here, blah, blah, blah. All these things. My grandma had no longer like, yes, they're coming to her. Miss Haynes, we can't find Becky. Like, she's already escaped this mental institution. Like, she's already like got out of this space. Yes.
We have no idea. And how old was she when?
Well, this is the varying situation where it was some
We're not
time
sure
between,
exactly.
Right. It was sometime between 5 and 12. Closer to 12, I assume, based on the fact that they entered into a special school at that point. This was probably right before that, in that time frame, but I'm not 100% sure. I do remember my grandma giving me this story that she was closer to like maybe 8-ish, maybe. Like she was fairly young. But I don't remember the exact, and I don't want to like just make that up, but I know it was between 5 and 12. When this was a lot of time when my grandma was dealing with her, the escaping at night.
Escaping,
Yeah. Always trying to look for her like that. I mean, can you imagine as a mother, where's my kid?
I mean, especially when you've got 8 of them.
Yes. Well, at this point, she would have only been, let's see, I think she would have had 6 kids at this point. Becky would have been kid number 6.
Though, like,
maybe had kid number 7. At that age, because then we have my Aunt Jana, and then we have my Aunt Lisa as the babies.
Oh my gosh, and I can't imagine like keeping track of Aunt Becky when she also has possibly another tiny baby. That's a lot to put on one person.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I gathered a lot of stories, because I had thought about writing a book about her a few years ago, I talked to my Aunt Nancy probably 4 years ago, kind of got a lot of stories, which are some really cool stories from her perspective, because she's the oldest daughter. My mom, who's middle and like closest in age to Becky, and then my Aunt Lisa, who is the youngest. So she would have been in the later stages of that, after my Aunt Becky was probably out of the house. So she would have got like that kind of thing. There's some varying different perspectives, and then my own personal one. So when she would come around, and then something that I got from my Aunt Nancy, this story is great. I love this story. But this story also changes your perspective of her. Again, she's an escape artist. She's very resourceful as even a young child.
Obviously, yeah.
Right. Something that my Aunt Nancy had told me was, again, now that she's older, she's out of the house, she was always in the hospital complaining, like almost like habitually complaining about being hurt. But then she would call my grandparents and complain that they don't, and I'm here and you're not helping me. And they're like, yeah, we are helping you. We're literally there. But then she would call other family members and say, no one's helping me. She was always trying to get money from people. Yeah. So she was always trying to work the system with the different aunts and uncles. It was very draining emotionally and physically on my grandparents. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I kind of understand by the point that I'm able to start seeing things, why a lot of family members at this point were exhausted from her. She was giving a lot of tension in the family, Yeah. So this one story I have to share. My Aunt Nancy, she was financially stable on her own, living out in her own little apartment, condo type situation. This is in Columbus, Ohio. I can't remember if she said she was in Westerville or somewhere like that, but she had her own place. And she was the only one that really didn't have kids or a spouse at the time to be able to take her Aunt Becky in. And I guess my Aunt Becky was hurt. I don't know the reason why she was hurt, but she had to go through something and she needed to heal. It was going to take a couple weeks and she needed to kind of rest up. And my grandparents said to her, like, that your house would be the best place where there's no one else there, blah, blah, blah. And my aunt was like, that's fine, but I'm not living there while she's there. She can stay in my place, but I'm coming to your house.
She's like,
yes.
She's like, she can go there, but I'm coming to stay with you. So,
right. My aunt, packs her bags to come basically stay at my grandparents' house while my Aunt Becky's at her house recovering. Seems the best case scenario. Then you don't have to worry about like there being challenges. Because she was known for her stealing. She was known, for a lot of different things. She was there for, I think my aunt said, a total of 8 days. And in that time frame, when my aunt comes back to her house, now you have to understand, this is a time frame when there is no cell phones. There are no pagers. You have pay phones to get a hold of people. There's no major networking of social interactions like we have today to find people like, oh, where's this person? Or like Facebook Marketplace.
Was there a landline in the...
Yeah, there's a landline.
There's landlines.
Yeah, there's landlines, yes.
So other than that, though, there's...
Right, other than that, yeah, and then you're going to pay for long-distance phone calls and everything back then. Back in my day.
I do vaguely remember for the first, I don't know, like 5 to 6 years of my life, we did have a landline at my house. And I very distinctly remember one time that the phone was ringing and I was a nosy little butthole, okay? I was a nosy toddler and I remember it ringing and I was always a turtlet who'd pick it up and be like, hello, with my little toddler voice, and they'd ask for my parents and I'd go find somebody to get the phone. But we had the phone downstairs and then we had a phone upstairs, which I think was in my parents' room, but I can't remember exactly. And I remember the phone rang. And I went to pick it up, but it stopped ringing. And so I knew that mom picked it up. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can listen. Because I was like 4 or 5.
Nosy.
But then I didn't realize that somebody can hear the click of you picking up the phone. And so I picked up the phone and I listened. And okay, there's more than one person in this house at this time. All right, my brother's home, I'm home, and my mom's home. And my mom... And I heard her through the phone, but I also heard her from across the house screaming, Willow, put down the phone.
She knew you.
Like, wow.
She just knew.
I was like, how'd she know it was me?
Because your brother didn't care.
No, he didn't care at all. It was always me. Anyway, sorry for my tangent. Continue.
Oh, no.
She's at the apartment.
Absolutely. Thanks for the share. When my aunt goes back to her apartment, my Aunt Becky had sold everything in that entire house. Food, clothing, furniture. The only thing that was left was a half bar of used soap.
In 8 days.
In 8 days. 8 days. She had sold everything of my aunt's.
And your Aunt Nancy is like, yeah, if I'm not there, it'll be fine.
I'm like, this is crazy.
That is, whoa.
Yes. So that's a cool story about who she was.
She was most certainly resourceful, because how in the heck did she sell everything in the apartment? I can't even sell
like things on Facebook Marketplace.
On Facebook, I was about to say, it is so difficult to sell things on Facebook Marketplace now.
You do it one item at a time, and you gotta wait for people to get. Yes.
How did she sell?
She was like hot selling like way
She's
before
like,
Facebook
I know who to get to. I know how to do this. She would have been a great salesperson then.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she should have done.
Yeah, I remember a story where she had come to our house. I was in middle school at this point, and we lived in Logan, Ohio. And my sister, I remember my mom had hid my sister's piggy bank, like hid the thing.
Wow.
And she found it and took the money out of it. Yes. So my sister's literally hid this thing, and somehow she was able to find this thing because she came to our house one time and stayed. And it was almost like everybody, it's not my turn, it's your turn.
Yeah.
Who's she staying with? Yeah, and my grandparents would change how they would drive her so she wouldn't remember how to get to their house when they lived out in the middle in Waverly, Ohio. Yeah. So she would come in. Go ahead.
I asked this not to be offensive in any way, shape, or form.
None will be taken.
Do you know if she had any trouble with drugs at all?
Not that, from my recollection of my aunts and the stories that I've heard, she never had an issue with drugs. Like, that was never her thing, from what I understand. Sneaking out, stealing, that was just her thing.
Okay.
And as far as I said, like, this is a time when autism and like different types of things on the spectrum weren't as studied as much or understood. That's true. I do feel like she might have been on the spectrum based on who she was. She was highly sexual. Like I said, like the way she would dress, it was always very provocative. That was Aunt Becky. Yeah. Like I said, I was very intrigued by her as a character. And I was very offended how everybody treated her. But then as I got stories, I'm like, I get it now. I get you guys were more cautious. And you were like, I don't want her at my house. She's going to steal something and it may be very valuable and I don't want to take that chance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but as a young kid, you're not told those stories.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's a lot of times you're seeing it as an adult and it makes a lot more sense than when you're younger and you just haven't learned that perspective yet.
Correct. I remember like I said, she would send me postcards from different locations across the connected United States and tell me where she was. And she always brought me jewelry. I said this, she always would either bring me jewelry. She was like, I have something for you. Like, she'd always bring me something, or she would send me something. And I remember one time I had a pair of, this one I distinctly remember, they were turquoise earrings that were in the shape of unicorns. Yeah. Oh, so that's cute. Yeah, I do remember those. But I mean, she loved turquoise. She loved unicorns. With that said, I think she had like a tattoo of a unicorn, and that's something that I identified her at one point. I don't know the exact. Yeah. And my mom is trying to confirm this with my uncle and aunt. But I do remember it happening that a couple years, 2 to 3 years before she was murdered, my uncle had to travel to, I think, Atlanta, Georgia, to identify her body because she had been so badly beaten and raped by 2 men and left in a ditch. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So when she's calling in the hospital and hurt, do you think, I mean, my first thought is with her lifestyle, is this because she's getting abused by the people, like her quote unquote clients?
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Oh my gosh. Karisa. We're going to add that to my compilation of different ways to say your name.
Okay. So yes, my aunt was a known sex worker at truck stops. Okay. That was something that was not just, it's not that we didn't know that.
It was not a secret. It was just.
That wasn't a secret. Correct. Yeah. Whenever she would come in town, she would be at a truck stop when she would call home and say, I'm here. Can you come get me? My grandparents would come get her and bring her wherever they were, the most local truck stop. And first of all, as resourceful as my aunt is, I'm pretty sure she could have found how to get to their house.
Yeah. I wonder if she...
And I think her driver's license... One of my aunts said that her driver's license was my grandparents' house. I cannot confirm nor deny that. I don't know if that's true, because I'm thinking if this woman is this resourceful, she is capable of figuring out how to... Plus, she's riding the roads with truck drivers. She's not unfamiliar with how to get to places or follow a map.
She probably just has enough wherewithal to like try and respect at least that, I guess, so to speak, with her parents to at least get their permission to be able to go to the house instead of just showing up.
Right. But It was more of just how to get there, because she'd come in on a truck.
Yeah.
And then she didn't have a vehicle to get from the truck stop to my grandparents.
That's true.
Except for a couple times.
Karisa. What do you mean?
Right. Okay, but here's the thing. One thing that my grandma told me about her was she was extremely intelligent. All these
Mhm.
things point to her being on the spectrum or some type of mental challenge, but at the same
Yes.
time my grandma said she was highly intelligent and that the physicians and psychiatrists that she had taken her to said she's going to be extremely brilliant or go completely the opposite direction.
Wow, all or nothing.
Right. Like and so it was kind of like she was just teetering on that. Anyways, now let's link this to the case because we know that in the last episode you talked about how the first murder he confessed to was like he didn't mean to kill her.
Yes, he was saying
This,
it was an accident, which, like,
right.
how do you accidentally strangle somebody to the point where you break a bone and the bone is broken badly enough that it's sticking out of their neck?
Well, and
On accident.
he also stated she was in his vehicle in his truck cab trying to have sex and he didn't want to have sex with her.
Yes.
Why would a man not want to have sex with a woman?
Thank you. I was like, literally, this guy is known. Like, he would talk about how he was so proud of being a womanizer and he thought the women would just fall over him. And I'm like, don't give me that crap about like,
Now,
well, I didn't want to. That no, that's a
I'm
lie.
not discrediting that he didn't occasionally want to have sex with a sex worker. I'm not discrediting that. What I'm saying is what would make a man go from I'm going to have sex with just anybody to like no, I don't want to have sex with you because usually they're in a relationship.
Stop it, Karissa. I mean, yeah, that's true.
And then the second one, he said he wasn't planning on murdering her, but he just kind of looked at her and said, I'm going to. And the third one, my aunt, he said he definitely had thought about it. He wanted, that was the thing. He wanted to kill her.
Yeah.
Why would he want to passionately kill this woman specifically, unless there was a connection? So let me take you down this rabbit hole. Now, my Aunt Nancy and my mom have both told me two stories. My Aunt Nancy said, so my grandparents used to live in a place called West Jeff. They had a single wide trailer. I remember this place because it's kind of cool how you could, there were these roads that would kind of almost look like a maze towards their place in this trailer park in West Jefferson. That my grandparents at some point, now my Aunt Nancy tells me this has happened in West Jeff, that he and my Aunt Becky came to their house for lunch one day, years and years before she was murdered. Okay. Then my mom tells a story where she thinks she met him at my grandparents' house, and which was years later. This is years past the West Jefferson house that they came to with just the truck cab, not of course the trailer, and came to my grandparents in Waverly, Ohio, and had lunch with my grandparents. This was my aunt's boyfriend that she was bringing for lunch. Okay, and my mom says I'm pretty sure I met him there, and she said I had.
What year was this?
So
Do you remember?
My grandparents moved there, I think, in '92. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Because
now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So my mom and my aunt said that they're pretty sure my grandparents had met him, and my aunt, or not my aunt, I'm sorry, my grandmother did say she thought she had met him, but then that story is like that's just a story that is kind of circled, into the thing. And we lived with my grandparents during this time frame. Like there was and then we moved out. My mom and I and my sister moved out into our own apartment at the time she had passed. So when we lived in Waverly in their house when we first moved to Waverly. My mom was going through a divorce. We lived in their house first, and then we moved in our apartment. So in that time frame when we lived with them was when she came there for lunch or something with him. And when my mom told me that story, I have this strange memory of a tall man with a grayish beard, but I don't know if that's a real memory or if that is a suggested memory. But it was nothing that I can I'm like, oh, I do remember somebody with Aunt Becky, but I don't remember the details. I do remember somebody with her at one point, but I don't remember the details.
That's wild.
Yeah. So now we're going to fast forward a couple years. I'm 17 now. We're living completely away from my grandparents.
I mean, you still look like you're 17, but okay.
Thank you. And I was working at Wendy's, and I was at the register. Yeah. And I remember my mom coming into Wendy's, and she said she needed to speak to me. And I remember there were people there, and like she was visually something was not okay. And we weren't super rushed with food people coming in or taking orders, but there were a few people in line. So
yeah.
I don't remember if my mom whispered to something, but someone took over the register so I could step out and talk to my mom. And that's when she told me that my Aunt Becky had been murdered.
Oh my Lord.
And that's how I found out.
I can't imagine. I mean, I sit there, excuse me, and I think about like being in this situation and having to deliver the news that somebody has passed. I mean, I work in, like I've said before, I work in veterinary medicine, and just being part of the conversation that we sometimes have to have, where we have to go in and tell somebody that their animal is terminally ill and that there's nothing that we can do. I mean, that's difficult enough, or even, having enough knowledge to be able to look at blood work or look at an x-ray and know what the doctor is about to go in and say to the owner. But when I go in there, I can't say anything. It's not my news to deliver. And, that's difficult enough. But being in this situation where you have to be the one to go tell another family member that a loved one has passed, especially so suddenly and in such
so
a dramatic
aggressive way,
yeah. I can't even imagine being in that situation. Like, I remember my dad being in that situation, having to tell me that my mom had passed away. And like, now being older, the respect I have for that moment and for being in that situation is immense. I just can't even, I have no idea what I would do.
Well, I wrote in my very first book, Crystal Gate, which anybody who reads my stuff know those were my first ways of writing.
Like, just be aware, this was the first one, okay? Yeah. We learned since
I was
then.
learning to write back then. But there was a situation where the main character is driving up her grandparents' drive, and the lights are on, and she's like, "It's not my birthday. Like, are they trying to surprise me? What's happening?" And this scenario is kind of me coming up to, even though it wasn't my birthday, but it was in the spring. I remember going to my grandparents. They had a double wide at the top of this hill on Markham Road, and going in and seeing all the family members there and seeing the dread. So I kind of put that emotion and that feeling and that scenario in my first book, because it was real for me. And the feeling of like, what's going on? There's some giggling. There's some people trying to like get away from the sorrow, but at the same time, the dread. And then of course you've got like the armchair detectives happening with my aunts and stuff, trying to figure out like, let's figure out where she was, all these things.
Yeah. Like all the different ways people are trying to figure out how to deal with grief, with all those emotions.
Yeah. Well, listen, my phone is on Do Not Disturb, but why is something coming through?
Is it Jamie?
Let's check. No, I don't know. So in our last episode, you talk about the last phone call that Alice Rebecca Haynes had made from a truck stop. That was to my grandparents. That was the last phone call. And that phone call helped them track where she had been last. Yeah.
Wow,
so
like
crazy.
Right before she
Well, that
died?
was the last one. She was calling my grandparents to tell them where she was.
Where was she at the time? I remember that they had they'd found, was it? Yeah, it was on Alice, where they had found the receipt or the ticket or something to a cab in Gainesville, Florida. Is that where she had called them from, or was this
I don't remember the name of the truck stop. I really don't remember the name of the truck stop. I remember them talking about that, but I'm sure that's in a lot of the information that we plan to get specifics, because I don't want to say where it was, because for me,
book that she was planning on writing 4 years ago, we're gonna do it now.
Yes, we are.
We're gonna tease that real fast.
Okay, so one of the things that is crazy when I'm hearing stories from my aunts and I'm hearing stories and stuff, there's this nagging feeling that one of the things that was an interesting point after she was murdered, and when we go back through and find the information on this case, I want to look and see if he did this with any other victims. But my mom worked at a flower shop in Waverly, Ohio, and there was a phone call. Someone wanted to send my grandparents stargazer lilies and it was more of like, it was like, sorry for your loss type situation, or like that kind of thing. And they wrote it down, and it was anonymous. This person would not give their name. That was completely anonymous. They take the phone call, they go to my mom, and they're like, hey, someone just ordered these stargazer lilies anonymously to be sent to your parents' house, which this person would have to know where my grandparents lived, which I know that there were wallets, and her purse was found in his truck. So my grandparents' address would have been on that.
No.
But the stargazer thing, I'm pretty sure on the side of his truck, he had the stargazer lily kind of like in vinyl or in the pinstriping type thing. Those were on his truck. But my mom said, absolutely not. That is from him. That is, no, we're not doing that. She knew, and she didn't fulfill the order. My grandma never liked stargazer lilies after that. Now, he had a girlfriend supposedly at this time. I don't know, like back in the trailer park, or those girls that he was flirting with. We don't know much about them, whatever.
So he was a womanizer, so I think he never really had stuck with one person. at a
Well,
time.
I think he had 2 different lives. He had his life when he was
Yeah,
in it there, but on the road, I think my aunt was his girlfriend.
that would make sense.
Especially since they're coming across each other so frequently over time that if
Yeah.
even way before these murders and during like and he said he had planned to kill her. Like he's planning to kill
Yes.
her, that means he knows her.
He wanted to, and that was something, especially as we talk about it now, that is just so interesting because again, I sit there and with especially with his first murder, when he was saying that I think it was Brenda, if I remember correctly, was his first one, and he was like, oh well, I didn't mean to kill her. There's that part of me that, especially if he is tied to all these other murders that they are suspecting him of, I'm like, I think he meant to. But at the same time, there could be a difference between him spontaneously being like, well, I'm just going to murder you, and him with your aunt, for example, and I hate to say this,
Planning
but
on it.
truthfully, with your aunt sitting there and saying, no, I wanted to do this one. Like, this wasn't a spontaneous, I guess I'm just going to kill you. This was a, like, I meant to. I want to do this. I'm planning on it, wanting to do all these things, and that is something that would be interesting. And again, the flowers, you talk about the flowers that he wants to send, I found nothing from any of the others. And again, there's not a whole lot on this case, there really isn't, but I still found nothing from any of the other murders, even the very small amount of research I did into the ones that he is suspected of, that they were trying to tie him to. Nothing about the murderer ever doing anything to taunt the family members in any way, like not calling them, not sending flowers, not leaving notes, like nothing in connection to the family members. So that is just, it's sick. It's just disgusting, but it's wild because he killed her. Like, I just can't get over that. He killed her. He knew he did it, obviously.
And so that's another thing, is you found that they ran over her body. But my aunts and my mom strictly state, all of them state this, he did not run over her. She was the only victim he did not run over. So that might be an online version, because
If he didn't, that means something.
follow me. So let's say he killed more than what he killed. So all of these other ones were more of like a crime of like his serial killerness were opportunity, like prostitution, sex work, opportunities. He killed these women or whatever in this whole like process of being this serial killer. But maybe my aunt witnessed something. Maybe she saw something she wasn't okay with, because obviously they were an item based on stories, and then maybe something happened and then they weren't an item and they split. And so for him, he's getting angry and more aggressive and like everything. He didn't mean to kill this one, but he's like, yeah, I killed this one or whatever. But let's say, for theories, he planned to kill her because of what she saw, and like because it was, and he got her back into the truck after who knows how long it had been since maybe they weren't together. But when she was at that truck stop and called my grandparents where she was with him at the truck stop. Okay.
That is just insane.
And let's say I'm killing her because maybe she didn't agree with it, or maybe she knew too much. Who knows what the reasoning was? Yeah. When he killed her, it was different.
Yes,
He didn't use his hands. And so he used his leg strength. And he didn't run over her body. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It was a little bit different in the sense of how he did it so aggressively and with so much anger versus a crime of passion in the moment. Like, what I'm presenting is there is a different passion behind him killing her, because there was a different connection that is not talked about, nor probably known by a lot of things, because he's not going to admit that he had a relationship or cared about her.
No. I mean, it takes pride in the fact that he thinks women are like fawning over him, which is ew. But I also wondered, and I think I might have brought this up previously when we have talked about this, and I hate to say it, but there's a part of me that wondered about like the jewelry that she would send you, because I mean, we know that she likes to steal things, so it literally could just be as simple as she would just steal it. Maybe sometimes she did purchase it, who knows.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's stolen.
But a part of me wondered if some of this jewelry was,
I don't know, it was all turquoise.
or were things that, I mean, some part of me wonders if some of the items were things that she may have stolen from him, because he liked to keep their jewelry, their shoes, their underwear. And so then there's a part of me that's like, oh my Lord, what if she stole it?
What if she stole from him something that was a a trophy or a memento of one of his killings, and she wouldn't give it back or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. There's so many reasons that we wouldn't know, but there was obviously a reason that he said he wanted to kill her.
Yeah. And didn't you, Karisa, didn't you say at one point that you had a theory that she may have helped him in some way, or that she knew more?
That's another theory. I'm not trying to speak ill of my aunt, but she stole, she manipulated, she lied. You know, these were all her MOs within our family. Okay. Who's to say she wasn't like mentally stable? Who's to say they didn't do these things? Like, she didn't help lure these women in?
Because then I also was thinking, what are the possibilities that the reason why he didn't kill her sooner was because she was useful in some way?
Right. And there was something that changed.
Yeah. I mean, these other women were women that he, other sex workers he would find and he would just kill. And it was just like he would just meet them. He would have sex or not have sex and get mad, and then they were murdered. Why was it different for her? Because she wasn't someone that he met at his quote unquote like home base, like where, in North Carolina where he actually lived.
Well, they even met them in truck stops. I mean, there's a truck stop thing,
So he obviously met her at a truck stop, just like all the other ones. Why didn't he kill her right away? What was she doing that was useful to him? Because I don't see him as somebody who would see her as more than a sex worker, unless she was doing something that was useful to him.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Whenever talking about sex work and stuff like that, when I listened to that one podcast, I was not too happy about talking about like all these women being drug addicts and cocaine. She didn't have, based on what I'm told, any drugs in her system. So
and I didn't see any reports either. I mean, they knew that she was most likely a sex worker, but from what I read, and I read all the articles I could find because that's all that's out there. I could find a few court documents on the appeal that he made, but they didn't go into a whole lot of detail about the actual case itself. So all the information I could find was from all of the different articles and things from the news outlets at the time. And I read all of the ones I could get my hands on. I never saw anything about your Aunt Becky having any drugs in her system. The only thing I ever found was that she was a suspected sex worker. And that's it.
And I can confirm that. That's something we knew. Yeah, she definitely, and I remember this time we were at Sears. And she wasn't like a skinny person. She was like more of a broader female. But she was busty, and she had these tight jean shorts on that showed everything you could think of, right? Daisy Dukes. And then she had like an off, and I remember I was like, oh, I really like her top, and it was like off the shoulder, like the little ruffly thing that just kind of a crop top thing. That was on the arms, but then also across the chest area, and she didn't have a bra on, and those things were showing. And I remember just staring, thinking how interesting that. I mean, just because I was a kid, I was very interested.
That's what you do though when you're that young, and you're like, wow,
that's interesting. Yeah, I was just enthralled by everything about her. How she was just. I mean, it was a strange confidence. That she didn't.
She's
care.
part of the free the boobie movement before it became a thing.
But like, I remember my mom being super irritated that she was like dressed like that and we're going in public, and I was just like, why do you care? And then, but I mean, I was young. I'm like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
But it was a very interesting. It was an interesting character of my life that I remember just being fascinated by.
Yeah. And I think too, and again, we said it in the previous episode, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's very, very important that whether or not she did drugs, I don't believe she did. I don't believe so at all. Whether or not she did, and even though others who were murdered did, that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that they deserve this at all. At all. There is no sense in trying to say, well, because they were on drugs, they might have.
Or because they were a sex worker that they had it coming. Please
like they
stop.
asked. No. These are still human beings. There is absolutely no reason why their career should have any effect on whether they are less than or deserve. Like, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my life. I do not care what you do with your life. You are still deserving of life.
Right. And so this is something very fascinating. So typically in the Parallax podcast, we will give you a case and we'll give you a couple different things. So I want to give you a little culture spin from this case.
Ooh, yeah.
Something you weren't prepared for.
I was hoping you would do something like this, though, on the low key. I was hoping.
Well, and I can only really attest to this because I just took a class that deals with sex and sexuality through history. And one of the
super fun. Okay.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that they dive into in this particular class is the history of sex work. And it was extremely fascinating to see how culturally accepted sex work was. And it was viewed as a kind of like a way to deal with evil because men thrive. And it's sad. Men wanted to have sex with people other than their wives.
Yeah.
So the lesser of the evils essentially was to create a space within cultures to allow sex workers. And there were different, even within the sex working community, there was different tiers of hierarchy per se.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, madams and like these different people who were seen as knowledgeable and men wanted to just have conversations with, not only sex, but women outside of their own marriage that they wanted to have relationships with. But then there were also, like, of course, we know and hear about the red light district.
Mm-hmm.
These were inside cities that were specifically made for sex workers, for people to go. They were governed. They were given well checks. They were given like a lot of attention. Like they had to pay taxes, like in different cultures, not all cultures, but they were viewed as an essential part of their world. In times and places, they were seen to be a reason to keep men from cheating on their wives, like and breaking up another marriage. Just go have sex with a sex worker, prostitution, things like that. So that wasn't considered cheating because that wasn't, I mean, they were looked at as lower forms in societal norms, but they were still a part of the culture.
That's interesting. I've never heard of it in that way, but that's, I mean, I don't love it, but that's also because of the culture I was brought up in. So, you know, that doesn't mean that it is wrong. It's just in the culture I was brought up in. It's not, you know, the most tasteful thing, but I digress. It is interesting though, that wasn't considered cheating, but I guess it kind of,
because it's almost like they weren't considered, it was it demoralized their humanity. So they were created as less than human. So they wasn't seen as they were cheating on another female or cheating on their wife with another person's wife. They were looked at as they were just fulfilling their needs.
Yeah, and the woman probably, like the wife would be like, oh, well, that, you know, that's, you sit there and if you're in a relationship and somebody goes and cheats, you're like, well, I don't know why he cheated with that person because blah, 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 blah. I guess it would be seen as more of, oh, well, that person's so much lower than me that I don't have to be concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were checked for STDs, things like that at certain time frames.
Like they were actually taken care of ish.
Ish is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's go into like America and we have the madams. Yeah, we have the brothels. So there were many, many madams who were more wealthy than white men. Yeah, the amount of money.
Ooh, girl.
But here's the thing. The culture of the madams, they were very political. They were in works of, you know, even the women's right to vote in certain aspects, even the drive for women to right to vote was pushed by madams.
Wow. You know what? Good for them.
Yeah, I mean it was an enterprise, it was an industry, and there were women running it.
Yeah. And good for them for, I mean, honestly, good for them for finding a way to use their feminine wiles in a way that was actually really going to help women in general.
Yeah. And again, you can go through different sources and read how the network of sex work was different, like the hierarchies, you know, you have these different levels. Like some people were considered elite, like these knowledgeable ones that would be in the elite cultures of these women would be talking to men, like men. Yeah, they were higher. They had a hierarchy of power, but they were never someone's wife. They were never someone's mother type situation.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah. I shouldn't use the word never because I'm sure there were children born in these situations.
Yeah, that wasn't something that
they weren't viewed like.
It was very common. Yeah.
They had a job, and their job was for that. But anyways, here we are. Any comments? Any questions?
Comments, questions, or concerns? That was My mind is currently just like reeling because I think there is a lot more to the story when it comes to your aunt and Sean Goble. I really, really think there is a lot more to that story. I think that the more you and I dig into it, especially once we start working on the book that I'm going to go ahead and tease that real fast, on the book that we're going to write about this case, I think we're going to find a lot more. Probably than we bargained for. I also am especially when you were talking about how you guys were pretty sure that they had been some kind of item like all the way back in 1992. The beginning of the murders across the Midwest was, I believe, early 1990. I think there might have been some in the very late 1980s. And that they were trying to connect Goble to, and he was all like, oh, well, I didn't actually start driving a truck until like 1991, I think is when he had his first job driving a truck. But he had family still in Illinois. Obviously, he's going to visit your aunt in Ohio. That makes me believe even more firmly that he probably did have something to do with a lot of the murders that were occurring across the Midwest, even earlier than the ones he was caught for. And he just thinks, well, I've gotten away with them for this long. I can continue to get away with them. Which, of course, when we dig into this even more, I think we're going to be able to find more information that's either going to corroborate that or show that he did not have something to do with them. But I don't know. I think that there is a link that I think we're going to find, whether it's good or bad, between your Aunt Becky and Goble and some of these other killings.
Now, something that I want when we go and research this case to find in the police records. I'm saying this on the podcast only so we can make a mental note to look and see if his truck cab, like, how on UC Semi, sometimes at the bottom on the driver's side, they'll have their handle. Their handle will be sometimes in vinyl lettering on there. Not always, but sometimes especially back in the 90s, they would do that. They would do like the fancy font and stuff. Yeah. And they would put their handle on there. Supposedly, this is a story, whether this is true or not, on the passenger side of his cab was the words little bit. So I'd like to see if that's true or not, because if that is true, my aunt's handle was little bit. So when we try to get the information, that's something we need to look and see if that's true.
And that will be interesting because I feel like that will cement even further that she must have been killed because she knew something and
or did something.
And I almost wonder if maybe she finally got to the point where she was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Yeah. And that's why he was like, well, fine, if you're not going to help me, then you're no longer of any use to me. Yeah.
All right. Until then,
this is going to be interesting.
You can find us at theparallaxpodcast.com. You can click our icons and follow our social media. You can also email us at info@theparallaxpodcast.com, and we will be doing more research on other cases. Until then.
Oh, yeah. And our social media, literally, if you don't find the website for one reason or another, it is theparallaxpodcast.com with our little red eyeball icon. So we're pretty easy to find. Please tell us in the comments below this or through the email or on our social media if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this case, or if you have any other cases that you want us to look into specifically, please tell us. Inquiring minds want to know.
Until then, I'm Karisa.
And I'm Willow Grace.
Thanks for listening.